Welcome, brave listeners, to another frightening tale, presented by yours truly, Wilhelm. Please tune in each week where I entertain my listeners with another dark tale of the paranormal, donated by authors from around the world. If you are an author of some paranormal fiction and would like to share a story with all of our listeners, submit one at frighteningtales.com. And while you're there, tune in for more than 30 hours of previous content. This week's tale is written by author Mark Wilhelm, pondering the mundane drive home, in a tale called A Long Way Home. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the campus. The air was crisp and clean, carrying the promise of a chilly autumn night. Emily and I, best friends since grade school, walked playfully arm in arm down the winding path that led back to the car. We had spent the day touring the university, marveling at the grand old buildings and envisioning ourselves studying and living there. We imagined the parties we'd get invited to, the fun we'd have. The thought of being accepted into such a prestigious school filled us with a sense of accomplishment and excitement that was nearly palpable. As we neared the car, we paused momentarily, taking one last look at the beautiful campus in the light of the setting sun, before turning our attention back to the real world. "I can't believe we're actually considering going here," Emily said, her voice full of awe. "It feels like a dream." "I know, right?" I agreed, my eyes shining with excitement. "I mean, just think of all the amazing opportunities we'll have here." Our thoughts drifted to the numerous clubs and organizations we'd seen during our tour, each more intriguing than the last. We imagined ourselves joining the debating club, the environmental awareness group, and even dance clubs. The possibilities seemed endless, and I'll admit we felt a thrill of anticipation as we envisioned the people we'd meet and the experiences they would share. But then, as we continued to walk, I began to feel a small thread of doubt creeping into my mind. I'd always been the more cautious of us, the one who tended to overthink things. And as we neared the car, I found myself wondering if we were being too optimistic. What if we didn't get in? What if we couldn't handle the workload? What if we ended up feeling out of place? The questions swirled inside my head, threatening to dampen our excitement. Emily, sensing my uncertainty, squeezed my arm reassuringly. "Hey, you know we'll do great. We've worked so hard to get here, and we've got each other. Nothing can stop us." Her words were meant to be comforting, but they only served to heighten my sense of self-doubt. I know, I said, forcing a smile. It feels like there's so much riding on this. You know, I don't want to ruin everything by being a downer." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "Well, let's just enjoy the rest of the ride home, okay? We can talk about this more later." Emily nodded, her expression sympathetic. "Of course. I understand how you feel, but trust me, we're gonna be amazing at whatever we do. And even if we don't end up here, there's plenty of other amazing schools out there for us to choose from. We'll figure it out, together, just like we always do." With a deep breath, I let go of my doubts, at least for the moment. I knew Emily was right. We would be fine no matter what happened. As we climbed into the car, the weight of the day's events began to lift from our shoulders. We buckled our seatbelts and started the car, the familiar hum of the engine filling the air as we pulled out of the parking lot. The drive home was a welcome break from the intensity of the day's events. Emily had made her playlist for the drive that we listened to, laughing and reminiscing about our time together, sharing stories from our childhood and our favorite memories of high school. As we cruised down the highway, the lights of the city twinkling in the distance, we couldn't help but feel a sense of contentment and gratitude for our friendship. As we approached the exit that would lead us back to our hometown, my stomach began to knot up. I had a feeling that something wasn't quite right. Emily, I said, glancing out the window. I think we might have taken a wrong turn somewhere. Emily looked over at the glowing navigation screen in the console. Where once it showed a network of streets, it now displayed all black, save for the marker that was the car. Oh, well, that's not right. The GPS must have lost signal. It'll take a minute for us to get in range again. She turned her attention back to the road, trying to recognize something from our first time through the area. Where are we? But as we drove further, the unshakable feeling of being lost only grew stronger. Suddenly, the car hit a pothole, sending a jarring thump through the undercarriage. Ow! I cried out, Emily grabbing my arm. Are you okay? Emily asked, glancing over at me with concern. Yeah, I'm fine, I replied, rubbing my arm where she squeezed a little too tight. It would be nice if the city could actually take care of its roads. But we both knew something was wrong. We should have been on the freeway by now. Em, when did it get so dark? What happened to the street lights? The landscape outside the car window was nothing but an endless sea of gently rolling desert, with nothing but the occasional billboard or highway signpost to break up the monotony. The highway seemed to stretch on forever, disappearing into the distance like a ribbon of asphalt stretched taut across the horizon. And yet, despite the lack of any recognizable landmarks, we were sure we'd taken the correct exit. Maybe we should pull over and ask for directions, Emily suggested, her voice laced with worry. I nodded in agreement, my stomach churning with unease. But ask who? There was nothing out here. I rolled down the window. The cold night air hit us like a slap in the face, making our breath cloud in front of us. The highway stretched out before us, a seemingly endless stroke of black asphalt disappearing into the darkness. The only sound was the sound of the car on the road, and a hint of the radio coming through that we'd turned down. My heart raced as I tried to recall any landmarks we had passed since leaving the exit. Emily, on the other hand, seemed to be more collected, her mind methodically sorting through the details of our journey. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, fumbling with it for a moment, before managing to bring the screen into view. No bars. Of course. There's no service here. It's only 2024. Why would technology reach this desolate road? I mean, it's not like we've conquered space and landed on Mars, built electric cars and invented blazing fast computers. No, we can't seem to get a signal onto a remote stretch of road. As we studied the GPS, we realized the connection warning at the top corner of the screen. The GPS was not aware of our location, so it couldn't plan the route. We must have taken a wrong turn somewhere along the road, maybe 10 minutes ago. The highway, they should have been on it, was now several exits behind them, they guessed. They exchanged glances, a mixture of panic and frustration written all over their faces. Emily, can we just turn around? I'm sure we'll find where we messed up, and then this'll all be behind us, I suggested. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. The car slowed and then pulled to the right, so Emily could make room for a U-turn. Suddenly, blinding lights illuminated everything from behind us, and an ear-shattering, concussive horn blast tore through the moment. Emily panicked in shock at the sudden appearance of a transport truck right behind us. The car swerved as if it too was startled at the sudden appearance of the massive vehicle. Regaining control, Emily floored it to stay ahead of its grille, back onto the road. The lights were gone, as suddenly as they'd appeared. I looked back. There was no sign of anything but an open road behind us. Where'd it go? I asked. What the hell was that? Emily exclaimed, clearly shaken. Can you see it? Where is it? It's gone. What do you mean it's gone? Something that size doesn't just vanish? She scowled. I don't know what to tell you, but the road is clear behind us. Without pulling over, she slowed and stopped the car. We both got out and stared into the night air behind us. The moon illuminated the desert road, back to the distant glow of city lights. You did see that, didn't you? Emily asked. Oh yeah, I felt that horn, I replied. The sooner we get off this road, the better, Em, I stated. Absolutely, she replied. We both got back into the car, buckled our belts, and Emily pulled the wheel hard to the right, and the car turned. No sooner had the side of the car opened itself to the road behind us than all the windows exploded from the impact of the massive grille of a Peterbilt, its engine more a deep growl than a rumble, its headlights blinding us with their brilliance. Then, that horn blasted again, and the airbags exploded in front of us. The car skidded to a stop, pointing down the road ahead of us. Its side caved in from the collision. Everything was silent now, but for the engine and the tinkle of settling glass. Our bodies ached from the impact. Emily sobbed. What's going on? Hell if I have any idea, I replied. Emily started to turn the wheel again, to turn around, and instantly it summoned the loud rev of the Peterbilt, roaring out of the darkness around us. It was clear we were meant to continue forward. What are the chances something is waiting for us down the road? I asked. Probably more than we'd want to admit. Then, without provocation, the car lurched forward. My eyes went large, and I looked at Emily. Was it pushing us? No. There was no other sound than the car engine. RPM spinning faster and faster. Emily was white-knuckled and looked terrified. What you doing, Em? I shouted over the engine, and the howl of the wind that not having any glass in your car provided. What do I hate more than anything? She shouted back through tears. I sighed. People trying to control you, I said, more to myself than back to her. We were now flying down the highway. Hold on, Emily cried out. I don't quite know what sparked the memory, but in that moment, I recalled Emily back home on the family farm, where she had 3 brothers and a little sister. I knew firsthand she could drive motorbikes and tractors and easily had this covered, but I was worried about That ghost truck. Emily slammed on the brakes and cranked the wheels enough to turn, but not outright flip us. We were doing it. The screech of the tires on the dry road announced the turn. 50 degrees, 60, 80, 90, 120, and then everything became what I can only describe as slow motion. The air itself ignited into 2 spheres of fire, just there, in the space next to the car, whose flames became encased in glass and chrome, and bit by bit the rest of the tractor-trailer formed around those bright lights, just as it made contact with the side of the tail end of the car. My head shot back hard into the headrest, and it felt like all the blood left my face. All the loose glass in the car seemed to float up and hang there in the air around us, their gentle brushes against our skin leaving behind stinging lines of blood. The car spun hard and hurled itself into a sandy berm of cactus and desert brambles, my ragdoll body testing the strength of the safety belts that held and dug into me. There the car rested, the horn's steady bleat screaming into the night as Emily's limp body rests twisted against the steering wheel, the wheeze of her breathing just ever so faint. That's when the angry blasts of the truck horn screamed at us from the road, the full length of the truck now visible in the moonlight. It was clearly an old and worn rig that rumbled and cursed at us. The entire thing kept flashing out of sight, only to appear back along the road, where it would then race towards us, horns blasting, but this time it seemed to smash into some kind of invisible barrier where the road ended. Then, like a glitch, it would snap back 10, 20 feet or so from the edge of the road and be traveling full speed into the barrier over and over, smashing with such force it seemed to disintegrate. I pulled my focus back to the steady horn and placed my hand on Emily's shoulder, pulling her back from the wheel. Em, how you doing? How bad off are you? Tell me, this is just like a scrape, like when you crashed your brother's bike trying to jump the yard. Oh, God. Please, Em, tell me you're all right. But her only reply was a faint, raspy breath. I got out of the car and stepped through the sparkling glass on the ground, my eyes glued to that truck, caught in a loop of trying to smash against some barrier that wouldn't let it leave the road, fighting to get to us. I turned and looked at the car. It was bashed up, but the wheels still looked all right, and the engine was idling. A little louder than before. I think that was the muffler over there in the dirt. I got to Emily's side and opened the door. I examined my friend, looking for punctures or breaks. If I had to guess, she's broken a rib and torn a lung. If the other lung was working, though, and she did nothing, she might be all right. I opened the back door and brushed clear as much glass from the back seat as I could, then took my sweater off and lay it on the seat. For her. Emily and I were like siblings. I practically grew up with her. She was my best friend in the whole world. I was not about to let her die in the desert. That was when I noticed it. It was quieter. I looked up from prepping a place for Emily to see the rig just sitting there across both lanes of the highway. Seemed it was accepting its place in the situation too. The bottom part of the vehicle looked wispy, like a fog was rolling past it, obscuring it. That wasn't the frightening part of it, though. Looking at the cab, you could see it was filled with that fog. And there were hands. So many hands clawing at the windows like they were trying to get out. It froze me on the spot noticing it, but I didn't have time to waste. Emily needed a hospital, and I was going to get her there. Breaking my gaze, I returned to my work. Emily now lay across the back seat, her breath shallow and labored. As I closed the door and moved to the driver's door, the rig let out a sharp horn blast that made me flinch, as if warning me, "Do not continue." But I got in. I closed the door and I put it in reverse. The car was resistant at first, pulling at the side of the hill caught in the twisted steel that made up the front. But then it tore itself from the earth and started to move. I backed up closer to the road, now parallel to the rig, its engine roaring at my defiance. And I started forward, back the way we came. As I started to move away from the rig, it would fade back into view ahead of us, its bright lights rushing towards me and then collide with the barrier and disappear again. It only ever seemed to be able to travel down the road, going in the direction it wanted us to head. I stayed as close to the road as I could without crossing the space that seemed to stop that damn truck. It fought hard to get to me, snapping back down the road over and over, smashing itself against the barrier that kept me from it. Again, its lights appeared further down the road and headed straight for me, getting brighter and brighter and brighter, and then I heard a different horn, a shrill car horn, attached to the bright lights coming towards me, veering away from me at the last moment. I swerved and nearly ran into another car. I hadn't noticed it there before. And then many horns were honking, street lights were suddenly overhead, and I careened into the guardrail at the side of the road. Traffic rushing past us. The city was all around us again. We made it back. Emily moaned from the back seat. I looked down and saw the GPS had a signal again, and the navigation screen showed us on a road. We were going to be all right. But I don't think, not for a moment, I'll ever forget that dark moonlit stretch of desert where we were hunted by that cursed truck. I often wonder what was waiting at the end of that road. And I hope I never find out.
Thank you, brave listeners, for joining me on another dark story. This week's tale was The Long Way Home, written by Mark Wilhelm. I urge all my listeners to go out and find more content by our weekly authors, if you're not too timid. Those of you who'd like to support Frightening Tales, it's no more difficult than clicking that like and subscribe below. Then tune in each week for another frightening tale. If you're brave enough.